I'm definitely curious to know what you guys thought about that story. We're missing some of our normal crowd tonight. It looks like we got a lot of the major players here. So you guys probably read that story and were like, "What the heck is this?" Right? What's going on in this crazy story? The writer of the story, of course, is John Steinbeck. You guys might know him from other books. He did The Grapes of Wrath, a famous 1930s, very political novel. Probably one of my favorite novels ever. But he also did Of Mice and Men about Lenny, and he did that. East of Eden. He's a Western writer from California, and normally he writes about California as a subject. So he's a writer who's definitely not a predominantly Gothic writer, but he wrote this one really weird story called The Snake, which definitely has some Gothic elements in it. So what was your guys' general impressions of that story? Were you guys like, what the heck? I saw you shaking your nodding there, Jessica. You want to kick us off?
It was a very strange story, and I'm almost positive that it probably has some type of sexual innuendos. It has to. There is no way it cannot.
Yep. Yeah, we can dive into that, right? So I definitely think you're on the right track there. There's some innuendo there. So well, what about the rest of you guys? What do the rest of you guys think as you about this story? Your first thoughts? Was it two last week?
I think it was very like weirdly descriptive of like her, like the woman's movements, and like her copying the snake just made me like cringe.
Right.
Like I understood the guy in that scenario. I was like, because he was like, if she's opening her mouth. I was like, yeah, hope she's not, because I could just picture that.
Yeah, just like how the snake, you guys know when a snake eats something, right? Its jaws unhinge, right? So he describes it like her jaws are unhinging as she's watching the snake eat the rat. So yeah, you kind of, this is actually based on a real story. Steinbeck had a friend named Ed Ricketts who ran an aquarium in Monterey, California. If you go to Monterey today, that aquarium's still there. But this actually happened. Some random woman came into his aquarium one day and was like, can I pay you to feed a rat to a snake? He was like, okay. Right. And then she was like really weird about it and stuff. So this is actually a story grounded in reality. This actually did happen. Steinbeck probably sensationalized it a little bit, but this actually did happen. So I see your look of disbelief there, Jessica. So
it blows my mind.
So I guess the question now is, what are some themes in this story? So it's a pretty simple story, right? We have two characters, the scientist and the woman. Of course, the scientist is in there with a bunch of animals, right, that he's maybe doing test experiments on. There's the one part where he literally like kills a cat for science, right? It describes how he has to do that. Are any of you guys big into, are any of you guys like super passionate about like animal testings, right? I usually have a lot of like English 101 papers about this subject, like the things that animals have to go through for scientific or maybe cosmetic testing. Any of you guys passionate about that subject? There's most of the time people are. A lot of people are really against it.
I wouldn't say that I'm passionate about it, but I do have my opinions on animal testing.
You mostly think it's wrong, or maybe a little bit in the middle, or go ahead and do it? What's your opinion, Daisy?
Well, I feel like I'm in the middle of it because I feel like it's wrong, but like, how else are you supposed to test something? Like, you'd have to use other people, which could potentially kill them. So why not just use like a rat or something? But I still feel bad for the animal because they're also in pain and they're being tested on.
Right. So without those human test subjects, right? Like, how else would we test to make sure these things go ahead? When it comes to medicine and stuff, right? I think that argument holds up. Maybe cosmetic products and stuff like that, that might be a different argument. But what's the rest of your guys' thoughts on the subject of animal testing?
I think it's honestly kind of cruel, just kind of cruel just to use animals. Period. Like, I don't know. I feel like you to have people volunteer to have stuff tested on them, but to do that to a animal defenseless, not being able to speak up for themselves or advocate for themselves is not okay.
Right. Yeah, that animal doesn't have a voice, right? So it's hard. That animal can't stand up for itself. So what about the different types of animals here? Like, does it really matter to, like Daisy or Kenzie, would it really matter to you guys if it's a rat, or in this case, like, or would you be more disturbed by it if it was a cat or a dog or something like that that's being experimented on?
I feel like I would be more disturbed with it if it was if it was a cat or a dog, because we see them more as pets instead of rats. We view rats like rats can be pets, but we view them more as like wild animals, like animals out in New York. That's common. But with cats and dogs, people develop like good relationships with them and sometimes give them like human characteristics and stuff.
Right. Yeah, we humanize cats and dogs, as you just said, Daisy. So unlike rats or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's really sad. But I also think, it's very necessary and we need it. I've had pet rats before. I used to have 4 and I love them, but like I said, I know that it's got to be done. Can't do it to humans, so it's just the way that it is.
Right. So you kind of see the pragmatism there behind it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm gauging your guys' opinions on this just because so much of this idea of animal testing comes down to this scientist character in the story. Excuse me as I wipe my nose randomly. But the scientist character in the story, he almost seems like it doesn't bother him at all, right? I don't know if you guys thought of that as you were reading it, but it's almost second nature to this guy, right? Like he puts this cat, he gasses this cat to death, right? And like he doesn't really think anything about it. Like whenever the woman comes in, there's a line somewhere in the story. I actually need to pull the story up on my computer, but there's a line somewhere there where the narrator is like, Dr. Phillips could when it talks about the rat getting eat, it's like Dr. Phillips could kill 1,000,000 of these animals for the sake of science, but something is wrong in this case when he's killing the animal just for the sake of sport, as the woman here seems to want to do, right? So he can go about killing them like a machine from a science point of view, but once we get involved in that, then something becomes more disturbing to him, I guess you can say. So what do you guys think, what really disturbed Dr. Phillips about what this woman did? Jessica, you said you thought there's a sexual innuendo there. Yeah, this
There is,
even
but
you,
sorry.
you can't quite put your finger on it.
No, it's kind of like the way that it's written. It kind of, I don't know, it kind of would remind me of like some trashy romance novel type deal.
Right.
That's I had notes on it, but every time I read one of the little stories or something, I write notes on it, but I don't know where my notes are, and I can't remember.
Let me see if I can find the passage, and I'll actually read it. Let's see. I'm looking at my notes. Let's see. Yeah, so on page 56 of the PDF, pretty close to the end of the story, the narration says, of course he'll eat it. He didn't kill it for a thrill. He killed it because he was hungry. The corners of the woman's mouth turned up a trifle again. She looked back at the snake. I want to see him eat it. Now the snake came out of its corner again. There was no striking curve in its neck, but it approached the rat gingerly, ready to jump back in case it attacked. It nudged the body gently with its blunt nose and drew away. Satisfied that it was dead, the snake touched the body all over with its chin from head to tail. It seemed to measure the body and to kiss it. Finally, it opened its mouth and unhinged its jaws at the corners. Dr. Phillips put his will against his head to keep it from turning toward the woman. He thought, if she's opening her mouth, I'll be sick. I'll be afraid. He succeeded in keeping his eyes away. Snake fitted its jaws over the rat's head, and then with a slow peristylistic pulsing, began to engulf the rat. The jaws gripped and the whole throat crawled up, and the jaws gripped again. He turned away and went to his work table. And then he kind of like bumbles around after that and like makes up an excuse for her to leave. Right. So I read you the passage just to see what you guys think that what's so disturbing about this. And if you get, this is a rated R classroom, so and if you guys want to spell it out, what's disturbing Dr. Phillips about this woman? Why is he so afraid to look at her there?
I thought that she kind of represented like his darker desires, like animalistic instinct. And I feel like he was afraid of that because like he was kind of suppressing it in a way.
That's good, Kinsey. Right. That sort of subconscious thing that he suppresses. He sees that there, and something about it kind of unnerves him a little. So, well, the rest of you guys agree with Kinsey, or did you put some other type of meaning on why that disturbs him so? I guess it's an ethics question, right? Like, is it okay to kill animals for sport, right? Versus, versus doing it for a science reason. So that's definitely part of it. I'd say the whole unhinging of the jaws thing, there's probably some type of like male fear here too, right? You guys could probably go guess where I'm going with this. Yeah. Paige is smiling. She knows where I'm going with this, right? Yeah, there's you guys. I don't have to spell it out any more than that, right? But you guys could probably guess where that's going. Um, yeah, there's a definite male fear there of what could happen in a certain act, right? So she kind of reminds him of doing these snake-like things. He's definitely disturbed by that. So yeah, I spelled it out for you as best as I could, right? So Jessica, do you agree with my assessment here of what that is?
Absolutely, very much so. I just wasn't going to say it. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of fun having this discussion with a lot of you guys, because I know most of you guys in here are still in high school. So I would be lynched if I taught this story in a high school classroom. So here we are. It's a strange story. Like we got a third person narrator who's explaining all this stuff to us. The narration is so simple though. Like he just really just tells you what happens. It's not like it's not like some of the other narrators. This is a really simple and easy to read story, but it's simple, but it's complex at the same time. That's one thing I like about this story. Jesse, the screen's randomly switched to you. I don't know if you were going to say something there, but Zoom seemed to think so.
No, I just I got disconnected and I got back on. I don't know what happened.
You're good. Yeah, so yeah, it's a little bit of a different flavor compared to other stuff we've been reading over the past couple of weeks. I kind of beat myself up over it. I'm like, I should have gave that story to them weeks ago. And I was like, well, in this random week where we're not doing much else, I'll have them read it just for the hell of it. So I'm glad you guys. I'm glad you guys got something out of it there. That's a story that's rarely talked about in English classes. Like Steinbeck's a very famous writer, but that story has kind of escaped critical analysis. Like it's rare that story's taught or put in books. I know about it just because I'm a big Steinbeck fan, but that story is one of these like rare hidden gems that you sometimes kind of stumble on. So anyway, I guess we can kind of segue over into other matters now. So I'll just ask you guys, like I'm like I said, it's a lot of this is my fault. I'm running behind, but have you guys been we could talk about the turn of the screw a little bit because I did start it again. Have you guys got very far with it? Have you guys finished it? You guys like halfway through? What's your guys' current state with it?
I finished it over the break.
Did you?
Yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, I'll be eager.
I started watching the series again too.
The Bly Manor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see the differences and what they added in to the story on Netflix.
Yeah, those Netflix shows are all really good. The Haunting of Hill House show is really good too. Yeah, so if you guys like those shows, those can be some possible paper ideas for later, right? Like sort of like a comparative study of the film versus the book. Like you guys can do a project like that if you really get into it. What are the rest of you guys thinking so far? Just your general thoughts without diving into too many specifics.
Mine kind of goes along with Paige because this is the first time I've actually read it, but I'm a huge fan of the Netflix series. So it really is pretty interesting to just see the differences.
Right. It's been a while since I've seen the series, Jessica. How would you say there's a lot of differences? Do they add a lot of characters in? Or?
It's not so much the characters. If memory serves, it seems like there's something different that happens when they see the ghosts, which then again, I watch a lot of those weird Netflix shows, so I could be possibly getting that confused. But it seems like in these series, they make, for lack of actually remembering, the babysitter, in the show, it's like they make her so ditzy, like she doesn't really know what's going on.
Really?
So, I mean, it's pretty nice though. I like the change up.
And too, the book mostly focuses on the boy being, what's the word?
Strange, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and in the series, it's both the kids, which makes it really, really cool too, because both of the, I don't know if I should say, is it okay to say?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because people haven't read it, because of the two adults that are trying to get inside of their bodies. They it was for love, right? Yeah, it's really interesting to see.
Yeah, one thing to say about the book, I don't know if you guys are what you guys think of the book style, but the book is written by Henry James. Henry James is a very famous American novelist from the late 1800s. But Henry James is very famous for being a realist writer, right? So what do I mean by that? Realist writer. Realist writers, they were adamant that they wanted to write stories that could happen, right? Stories that are grounded in some type of reality, right? Like something like, I don't know, Frankenstein or Dr. Jekyll or something like that, right? So those things were too fantastical for realist writers, right? They wanted to write books about ordinary people living ordinary lives, going through plots that seem ordinary. So there was a whole movement to get away from like writing about these big grand subjects like creating life, like in Frankenstein or something, right? To writing a story that could happen. So James as a writer is his brother was named William James. William James was a very famous psychologist. So both, of course, Henry was the novelist and William's the psychologist. But Henry's books are very much concerned with psychology and things like that as well. So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but this book is very psychological, probably more so than anything we've read. As far as like thinking about like what characters' motivations are and things like that. Another thing to say about James, and I'll see if you guys agree with me here, but James's writing is as dry as paint, right? Like he's very much a dry writer. His books are rich. They've got some really great psychology in them, but his writing style is very dry. But it's almost a chore to get through, right? But if you work your way through the chore, you'll get a lot out of it. We're just have some of you guys sort of encountered that just so far, like, oh man, this guy's writing style, I don't know about it. Or have I read too much other Henry James and this one's not quite as dry as I think? What do you guys think of his style so far, just based on your reading?
I can see where you're coming from, but I didn't actually think it was that bad. But then again, it could be because I kind of sort of knew a little bit about it just from watching the series.
Right. Yeah, the narrator goes into extreme depth about everything, right? I don't know if that's something you guys noticed. The narrator is super descriptive about like all the rooms, more descriptive than any other work we've read. He's descriptive almost to a fault, I guess you could say.
I know it was a long time ago, but that's something that I didn't like about Irving was that I feel like Irving like described every little thing.
Right. Sleepy Hollow is very drowsy. It puts you to sleep, right? It has a slumbering influence over you, right? He described the same things over and over and over, right? How do you feel about, I don't know how far you are, Haley, through the book, but what's your thoughts on James and his writing style?
I have not started on it yet, but I've watched a little bit of the show.
Right. So I don't feel too guilty about not finishing it today myself, then, if some of you guys haven't got through it either. But yeah, I'm just giving you that warning. Like, it's a very good book, but his style is a little dry, but that's by design, because he wanted to take out that very fantastical writing from his stories. He wanted, even though it's a ghost story, he wanted you to think that this could actually happen. Maybe this is this character's psychology that's making him think it's a ghost. So the next book we read, Haunting a Hill House, is very much along the same lines. Like, we're going to read this haunted house story, but it's going to make you ask the same questions. Is it this character who's nuts, or is there stuff actually going on? So the next book will kind of make you think, is the main character like schizophrenic or something and imagining this stuff, or is this actually real events? So the rest of the class is very much grounded in this psychological horror realm, right? Is it a whole class has been to an extent, right? Instead of calling it the Gothic class, we should have just called it the psychological horror class, because that's pretty much what it's been, a study of psychology and horror. Yeah, something to consider. James is really into psychology, so as you read, maybe think about what these characters are doing and their motivations, all that. You can think about it through Freud and all that stuff too, if you want. We've already done a lot of that in here.
Yeah, it's really nice to read stuff like this because I plan on going into psychology myself.
Are you planning to go to the counseling or something like that, Paige? Or
Yeah,
are you doing that Lindsay Wilson program through Southern?
yeah.
Yeah, you'll see me again then, because the lit class, the 200 lit class, all the Lindsay Wilson people have to take, and I'm the only one who teaches that one. So I'll probably see you again in the fall semester.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, that's a super good program Southern's doing. Get
Yeah.
a whole bachelor degree for the price of community college, right? So
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's really nice. I'm really happy with it, with how it's going so far.
Kylie says her internet has been out for the past hour. So that's all we'll say about Turn of the Screw for now then. Like I said, finish it up. I think next week asking you to finish Turn of the Screw up and then the first 3 chapters of Hill House. I don't think I'll be overworking you there, because yeah, it's not so bad. The first 3 chapters of Hill House you'll read in 20 minutes probably. So it's a really quick read. So yeah, we'll have plenty to discuss. Well, I guess now's the time to get into the not so fun stuff, and that is the second short paper. So let's dive into that. I haven't posted this to Brightspace yet. I'm going to. I was finalizing the questions just a couple of minutes before class, but so the second short paper, this will be the last of the short papers. Remember, you only got to do 2 in this class. So remember, the short papers are designed to maybe help give you an idea for a later research paper, right? So if you really enjoyed doing that first paper, maybe you got an A, you felt really good about how it turned out or something, you can develop these 2 short papers into your longer paper later. So you can kind of make it a longer extended version of one of your short papers. That's one reason why I give these short papers. They might sort of give birth to an idea here for your later papers. But I'm giving you plenty of subjects to write about. This will be due about 2 weeks from now, so the 15th of April. That'll be when I have this due. After that, after the 15th of April, we'll probably have something due almost every week as we lead up to that research paper project close to the end. Before I dive too much into that, I'll stop the share and I'll ask you guys questions here. Did you guys get to preview that video I made last week about the research paper process and what all's coming up and all that stuff? Did you guys? I kind of gave you a little taste of what's coming, but do you guys have any questions about any of that? What we have coming ahead? Maybe thinking about a topic idea, anything of that nature right now that we can discuss? Is that two or three weeks from now?
I'm so sorry. Can you please repeat the last part of that question? My brother came in my room and was talking his head off.
I'm basically just asking if you guys have any questions about the research paper overview that I did last week for you guys. I made a little video about what's coming last week. I'm just curious if any of you guys had questions.
I didn't watch the video, but I believe it was right when you posted the thing about it, like the thing that I could read about it. I did read that. Is it like paper 1, but a new paper?
So you're talking about the final paper at the end of the class?